What's up, everyone? We're going to be talking about money, money, money today, a little bit later, as in dark money. What's up, Mike? How you doing? How's your week been?
Oh man, I'm discouraged. A little discouraged. And it has to do with that money, money, money. That is my money, 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 and your money, 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 and all Americans' money, money, money that's going to go to pay insurrectionists and violent traitors to this country because Donald Trump thinks that they're the victims in the January 6th story.
Yeah, we actually have a clip. We weren't supposed to run the clip right away, but now I want to run the clip of him talking about how badly they were harmed, that some of them even off themselves. I think we have a clip.
Yes, of course. The anti-weaponization fund, have you dropped that?
No, a court ruled against it.
Yeah.
But just so you understand, these are people that have been decimated. These are people that lost their lives over nonsense, where the FBI said, go in, police, go into the... And they were supposed to serve 5 years, 10 years in jail. People committed suicide. People were treated, there's never been anything like this. What happened to those people? And these were many great people. And I gave them pardons. I'm very proud to have given them pardons. And I think they should be reimbursed for a crooked government. The government.
How do you even watch that without going into a fit of rage?
Oh, I'm raging. I mean, he's just, there's no other way to describe Donald Trump. He's just a sick piece of shit. Yeah, people committed suicide. There were law enforcement officers that were struggling with the trauma of what they experienced that day and took their own lives. There were 140 police officers that were injured, some severely, some sustained injuries that were career ending. And Donald Trump continues to peddle these lies. And what they're out and out lies that police officers invited anyone into that building. It's a lie. Yeah. The FBI, that these FBI agents that were there, that weren't there, invited these individuals into the building. Complete and total lies. And the fact that there's no pushback to that on behalf of the media, on behalf of anyone for that matter, only continues to foster these conspiracy theories and this idea that these individuals are victims. They're not. They are traitors to this country. They're lucky that they got away with prison sentences.
Well, the pushing back is exhausting, right? Like, and I think that's the thing. There's the onslaught of tyranny that's coming out of the Trump administration, and people are being gaslit to a level that would require an entire dedicated segment every single day on every single news program and every single hearing to talk about the corruption, to talk about the upside down of it all. And that's how they're able to control the narrative, right? So if we're always in reactive mode and having to push back, we also can't build our agenda. It's almost as if we need twice as many people on our side to be able to combat all of this that's coming our way. And we can't have twice as many people if we don't have the money. See how I brought that back around to the money, money, money thing? If we don't have the money to do that. And our guest tonight, y'all, is Lisa Graves. She's the executive director of True North Research, and her work has been featured in books on dark money. And this is a conversation that we're all having right now. Is, well, billionaires are terrible, but maybe we need our own billionaires because they have their billionaires. I don't know, like, that's the thing about money. You can't take our money out and leave their money in. And so this is a conversation that I think needs to be had. And so I'm glad that she is here to have that conversation with us. Hi, Lisa. Looks like you're on mute.
Oh, you're muted.
There
yes,
you go.
It's an honor to be on the show with you, Maya and Michael. I am a fan of your work and your voices in speaking the truth. And it's an honor to be here today with you.
Yeah, thank you for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. You have been immersed in this research before I think people saw the results of having so much money in politics. What is your thoughts now on seeing the corruption that is almost behind the scenes now also in front of our faces as well?
Well, I think there's a couple things to think about. One is, in some ways, Donald Trump is the front man. He is really enacting a very terrible agenda for America, as you all document on a regular basis and has been documented. But he's doing so not alone. He's been aided by the Supreme Court, by the Roberts Court. The Roberts Court paved the way for basically pardoning him for his egregious crimes around January 6th. It paved the way for his return to power by telling some subset of the American people that he did no wrong and in essence could do no wrong when he was engaged in his so-called official acts. In that opinion by John Roberts, where he concocted immunity for criminal prosecution for a president, John Roberts tried to set the pardon power beyond the review of Congress or the courts. That doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to accept this. We don't have to accept a situation where a president is pardoning his co-conspirators, the criminals who did his bidding, the people who attacked our police, people like Michael and others who were on the front lines of defending our democracy. We need to have reform of the Supreme Court and its egregious decisions, which have also led to this injection of billions of dollars from billionaires, distorting our democracy, playing winner, deciding who's a winner and loser in these congressional races due to this dark money, this big money that's out there, both money that's disclosed and money that is not disclosed. But beyond that, I think we have to look at what's happening, where you have a radical, reactionary, unhinged president who has been given the green light by the Supreme Court in countless ways, including in trying to bleach out the Black Caucus in our Congress in order to put their thumb on the scale of justice for the Republicans, to prevent there from being real oversight by Congress, to prevent there from being an opportunity in the House and the Senate to check this president, and also to prevent there from being further investigations of the dark money that has encircled this Supreme Court, including the gifts that have been reported on that Clarence Thomas and others have received. So we are in a multi-phase constitutional crisis. It began, I think, really with the Citizens United decision, but it accelerated with that counter constitutional immunity decision, and with Donald Trump's actions coming into the second term, pardoning these people, including Stuart Rhodes, who was convicted of seditious activity and destroying evidence and sentenced to 8 years, duly sentenced to 8 years. The idea that his sentence would be commuted, that this Justice Department would try to get him the charges against him released, the activities that this Justice Department, led by acting with a capital A Attorney General Todd Blanche, who's acting like Donald Trump's criminal defense attorney, is absolutely appalling and counter to justice and counter to the interests of the American people. We should not be paying these insurrectionists anything. They were the aggressors. They attacked our country. They attacked our police, and they should not be paid a dime. And quite frankly, the Constitution in the 14th Amendment specifically bars paying people for their expenses engaged in an insurrection. If we can't pay their expenses, we certainly shouldn't be paying them damages.
And you talk about paying the money, and I think that's been on top of mind. A lot of Americans, when they first were hit with this $1.776 billion slush fund, they had the appropriate reaction. They were appalled. Regardless of what side of the political aisle, I think most Americans see January 6th for what it was, which was violence committed against police officers, regardless of the politics behind the day. And they are not inclined to spend their taxpayer dollars subsidizing these individuals' lifestyles or future lifestyles. That being said, Todd Blanche is called to the Hill. He testifies that the fund is dead to calm everyone's nerves. But the fund is not dead. The fund in its original state is not going forward. But then the number two, I think his name is Woodward, Stan Woodward, if I'm not mistaken, over at the Department of Justice, responded to
another Trump defense attorney. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Responded to a tweet by Lindsey Graham, in which Lindsey Graham called for, the payout, the continued pursuit to pay out these individuals who had been so badly mistreated by the Biden administration, these violent traitors to our country. And Woodward signaled by simply saying, "We're on it," and then deleted the tweet. And further investigation reveals that they are going to continue addressing each lawsuit against the federal government one at a time. They can pull from money that already exists within the Department of Justice's budget to settle these types of lawsuits. Again, taxpayer dollars. And even worse, they don't need to disclose any of these payouts. And there's no dollar amount, no limitation on the dollar amount that they can pay out. So presumably they could exceed the original $1.76 billion, which is why I said at the beginning of the show, I was so discouraged, because you see immediately the media and everyone else move their attention beyond this because they think it's done, when in reality, it's not done. It's going to continue.
Well, I think that's exactly right, Michael. I really appreciate your underscoring it. I want to join both of you in highlighting this until we are able to stop it, because it is completely inappropriate for this money to be expended, our money to be expended, enriching these individuals who attacked us. The fact that this president has pardoned them, pardons which I hope later will be revisited as illegitimate and inappropriate under our Constitution and the limits of a president's power. The fact that they pardoned them is one thing. Then enriching them is another. And who knows how many weapons these seditious individuals, some of them like Stuart Rhodes, are going to stockpile with our tax dollars to engage in further violence under the presumption that they would be immunized or pardoned by Donald Trump for any acts they commit in loyalty to him and against the United States. This is an untenable situation. And you're exactly right. Right now, under what this department has said is that they're going to continue on a piecemeal basis that could accumulate into the billions of dollars without our consent and try to hide those settlements from the American people. We have an obligation to elect people to Congress who are going to fight that, who are going to insist that those payments be exposed and clawed back. We cannot have insurrectionists being funded by the United States of America by our tax dollars. And also, I will say, Todd Blanche may think he's stopped the headwinds, certainly this concern about Congress laying down in response to getting this concession. The reality is that you can't walk into a bank and start to rob it and then walk out the door without the money and get away with that crime. There is an ongoing investigation by the federal court in Florida into whether a fraud was perpetrated on the court. Those are the words of 35 former federal judges, led by Judge Luttig and others, to say that there has been a fraud committed on the court. I hope that ultimately Todd Blanche is removed from his law license, that he's disbarred. This conduct that he's engaged in is in defiance of his obligations as Attorney General of the United States, as the lawyer for we the people at the Justice Department. Instead, he is using our money, using our Department of Justice to act like he's basically on the side of these insurrectionists and giving them our money and lying to the court, quite frankly, about what went down. And so I hope that there are more investigations, and I will work for there to be consequences.
I want to go back to what you said that is really something I think that needs to be said again, is that the future forward effects of this are that these folks now know they can, one, take this money and stockpile weapons, but they can also have the understanding that they can, let's say, be around polling locations, committing crimes in the future, and know that they are protected. And so for the people who are watching, who are very concerned about the timelines of it all, yes, we need to act quickly, but these folks are now emboldened. They've seen what Trump is able to get away with. So, Mike said he's discouraged. I don't know what the word is for what I am, because I'm watching people not push back, that whole every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, or that there needs to be. I'm not seeing Congress push back in a forceful enough way that this can be stopped in time for the midterms.
Well, I would say a couple things. One is, even though Trump can pardon people for federal crimes, he cannot pardon them for state crimes. He can try to pressure governors like Jared Polis and others to cave in, which I think was done inappropriately. But the fact is, we've seen in Minnesota and other states, new criminal investigations being pursued against lawless acts by Trump's agents. And so violations of federal law, at least right now, this president can pardon. We will see about whether those pardons will stand. But at the state level, they cannot escape state liability for state crimes, as long as we have prosecutors and attorneys general who are going to pursue that. So there are some guardrails left. Second, I would say, we have a situation in which it is the case. The timing is that Donald Trump is doing this, Todd Blanche is doing this as we're coming into a midterm election, and where they've already been saber rattling about ways in which they want to disrupt those elections, seize ballot boxes, send troops or send ICE agents or even vigilantes perhaps to polling places. There's a robust effort by secretaries of state to stand up to this, to prevent that, to work in coordination with local law enforcement to stop that kind of egregious or any sort of intimidation of voters. But we are going to have to prepare for that together and insist, not just protect each other in terms of getting to the polls, but ensure that those votes are counted and that this election is not stolen by this president by selectively disrupting cities, which is what he's already signaled he may try to do. We also have the problem with the Postal Service, where Donald Trump's Postmaster General has signaled that he's going to aid him in trying to prevent people's votes from being cast if they're not on some special list. That's outrageous and also counter-constitutional, anti-constitutional. That's going to be litigated. And so there's a robust litigation effort. And I would just say on the I guess two last things on the upside of this. One is the stink of this deal they cannot get away from. This stink, the stench of it continues. And we are going to have to do our part to make sure that any other settlements that come out in this, like you said, Michael, the unknown fund that remains, in essence, that's not dubbed 1776, like the hashtag of Lauren Boebert and others that they were sending around on the morning of January 6th to signal their alliance with this insurrection. The fact is that there also is the outrageous settlement of the IRS case in the IRS component of it, to claim that Donald Trump, his sons, his businesses cannot be investigated ever for their IRS violations, which is practically a concession of IRS violations by this family, by this, what I consider to be a crime family, quite frankly. The fact is that more and more people get what's going on. They hate what's going on. They dislike the direction that Donald Trump is going. They dislike what this Justice Department is doing, the real weaponization of the Justice Department in favor of Trump's wild and outrageous conspiracy theories, and destruction that is at odds to devotion and allegiance to the United States. So I'm actually hopeful. What I see is more and more people saying, hell no.
Okay. I love hopeful because it does. Right now, things are looking less than hopeful, I think, when people are stuck in the day-to-day of it all. As far as even what mechanisms do people have other than calling their representatives, putting pressure on the media to pay attention to this, because at the same time, everyone's also living their own lives. Everybody's struggling with expenses right now. What can one do other than to just sit and wait?
Well, I'm going to confess that I am not a good singer, but I do like the idea of a choir where we're holding a note together, and we can't always hold that note like the entire time. We have other people coming in to spell us as we carry this tune forward. And so we're going to have to just keep handing the baton to each other and supporting each other in this. We have to consider that this election isn't necessarily, and certainly isn't what just happens in November of this year. It's what happens in June and July and August and September, to continue to say no, to continue to call members of Congress, whether they respond or not, to keep the pressure on and to accelerate that pressure, to protect our democracy and what's left of it, and begin the process of boldly restoring and expanding our rights. We cannot give up. We cannot give in, or we will surely lose. They're not giving up. We have a moral obligation to not give up, and in fact, to double down in our efforts to eradicate this extremism in terms of holding the people accountable, including Donald Trump. I'll say that in my personal capacity, and all of his minions. This is not the America that we should be seeing on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. We need to hold that vision of our Constitution, our country, for ourselves, or they are going to rip it apart. And I know I guess I'll speak for you too. I assume that is not acceptable. We are going to have to just, catch our breath, hold that note, pass the note, come back, and ensure that the outcome in terms of people standing up and speaking out coming through this November and beyond November is so strong that our voices prevail.
That's amazing. I was also hoping you'd say we could stop paying taxes. That's just
Well, I want to pay taxes for things like public school, but I certainly don't want to pay taxes for things like money to pay these traitors. Absolutely not.
I want to be a conscientious objector to paying traitors. I think that's fair. I don't know. I'd love to hear what people in the comments think. Let us know. But Mike, you and I have talked about a lot of this before, not seeing the response, the reaction from our elected officials, from our leaders that we would like to see. And so I say that jokingly about not paying taxes, but at the same time, I do not like my money going to where my money is going right now. I'm not happy with it. And I know a lot of people aren't happy with it. And so when we see them being lawless, I think it's not just you, Lisa, who looks at them as a crime family. Most people are starting to see it that way, including people abroad. We saw what's happening in Albania and the Trump family wanting to put a resort where they probably shouldn't be putting a resort. And they took to the streets. And so, look, somebody in the comments agrees with me. There we go. I agree. I agree with me too. Is that why are we giving money to a crime family? It should just, no.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that these things can feel hopeless at times. It's daunting, right? It's daunting to have the powers at the White House arrayed in this way. It's daunting to have a Justice Department that has so abandoned its actual mission on behalf of the American people. It's daunting to have hacks and loyalists put into key positions of power, including absurdly, like a guy who has been pursuing Donald Trump's personal agenda to attack attorneys general like Letitia James, putting him in charge of the Director of National Intelligence, our intelligence community. That is malpractice. That is misconduct. That is a completely unsuitable appointment to that post that is supposed to help protect the American people and our interests from foreign threats. And so we could not, be like more shocked basically on a daily basis by just the series of incompetent loyalists, people who have no skills or no training in the jobs that they've been assigned, or if they do, they certainly weren't the best person for the job and have used those posts in ways that have been destructive of the interests of the American people. I won't get into all the examples from the cabinet, which one of my friends called not just a cabinet, not a cabinet, but a junk drawer. But the fact is, is that what's happening right now is not okay. What's happening right now, we have to recognize just how abnormal it is and how every day there's just another crisis, another egregious breach of our rights, of the rules, of our buildings, of our society. And as hard as it is, we have to just come together and say, we are not going to let the bastards win, as the famous saying from Handmaid's Tale. We cannot let them win. And so that's not going to be over in an instant. This is going to take work, but we have to start building toward that better future than this future, this dystopia that Donald Trump is trying to impose on America through these extreme decisions and through trying to pay off and enrich people who just violently and outrageously attacked our nation on January 6th and attacked our brave Capitol Police. And I will say, since I've got the floor, when I was writing my book, Without Precedent, about John Roberts and about what happened on January 6th, it includes a part about that. One of the things that I saw in the investigation of the January 6th committee was that like 2 days before January 6th, Donald Trump asked the acting Secretary of Defense to disarm the National Guard in DC, to disarm them. And then the acting Attorney General and his aide, basically another person lower down, said that no one could arm the National Guard without an express command directly from Trump's people, basically at the Defense Department. And so as Michael and others were fighting valiantly to protect our members of Congress and to protect the January 6th vote of the Electoral College, what was happening was, and I think people need to know this and hear it again, was that the Secretary of Defense, the acting Secretary of Defense, Donald Trump's handpicked appointee, was ignoring calls by Steny Hoyer, by the governor of Maryland, from Nancy Pelosi and others, calling for help to aid the people on the Capitol whose lives were being attacked by this violent mob that Trump unleashed. And he sat on it for hours as Donald Trump tweeted his encouragement to that violent crowd. And then only later in that afternoon, after hours had passed, after Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence had gotten to security due to the help of the Capitol Police, that they weren't murdered as some in the crowd were calling for. It was only then that the acting Secretary of Defense of Donald Trump allowed the National Guard to go to the Armory, the DC Armory, and get the shields and weapons that they needed to help defend the Capitol Police. This was a deliberate act. I know that the January 6th committee did not specifically urge charges be brought against them, but my reading of what happened was an effort to unleash that mob to grave violence and then decide whether they were going to declare martial law, to decide whether they could actually stop that vote from being counted. And it was only because of the courage of people like Michael and other Capitol Police that our nation, survived that day.
I mean, there's no mistake about it. It was a premeditated attack on our Capitol that was orchestrated, funded in part by Donald Trump himself. I mean, I think a lot of people, and I'm glad you brought that up, a lot of people don't realize the fact that, there's all these conspiracy theories. Nancy Pelosi denied the National Guard deployment. First of all, that's not in her capacity. Second of all, the National Guard was deployed that day. There was hundreds of National Guard troops that were stationed throughout the city, manning traffic posts, et cetera, et cetera. They were recalled back to the Armory so that they could, like you said, refit with the appropriate tools for dealing with a mass riot. And the Trump administration sat on that literally for hours. And to give you, a better understanding of how much time elapsed, police departments from as far away as New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, all these surrounding agencies were able to respond and essentially quell the riot before the first National Guard troops ever stepped foot on the Capitol grounds in that capacity. And so the idea that the National Guard saved the day is absolutely unequivocally false. They got there to help clean up the mess, and that's it. They were sitting at the Armory waiting for orders from the Trump administration that never came.
Yeah, I mean, it is just the disinformation that's been out there, the attacks on the members of Congress to try to blame them for what really happened, which, as you point out, Michael, was a deliberate action to ensure that they did not have the arms or the tools needed to help, and to ignore those calls for help. And so it was the police and the police only that were able to quell that crowd. And it was through many valiant acts, and to come back to where we began, that caused great physical harm to so many of our Capitol Police, honorable men and women. And some of them, lost their lives. Some of them were severely injured that day, but some lost their lives afterwards in the aftermath of being so violently attacked by their neighbors, by fellow Americans, in pursuit of Donald Trump's malignant agenda to stay in power, even though he lost that election.
Yeah, and then have to bear witness to, the country denying the reality of that day, or at least so many in the country denying the reality of that day, to include people that those officers fought to protect. Who are now trying to pay the insurrectionists hundreds of millions, if not billions of American taxpayer money.
Yeah.
Well, and you hit on such a good point, Michael, because that's a great way to message this as well to everyone, the American public. People are struggling right now with credit card bills, with mortgages, trying to fill up their cars. And so the American people could use a hand. If there was going to be a stipend for anybody, a stimmy for anybody, it certainly shouldn't be for the people who attack the Capitol. I think the people who are being decimated right now are anybody who's having to go to the grocery store in Trump's America.
Yeah, if you have the clip, play the clip of the 69, whatever the hell that.
Oh yeah, whatever he's talking about. Yeah,
but it's the economy. It's the greatest economy ever.
Democrats wanted high taxes. I wanted low taxes. I'm right, because that's why the economy is booming. Look, we have a war going on, and the economy is booming. We have a war going on, and today we just hit another number 69 is all-time high today, and we have a war going on.
Well, we're a few. First of all, I thought it was an excursion. And I thought there was a ceasefire, and I thought the war was over. So there's that piece of things, but so out of touch with reality. And I think that's what happens when someone has that level of money, but also power. And he is acting like an untouchable. He's untouchable.
Well, just seeing that clip, it's just appalling to see the whole setup there, quite frankly, and to have the official news, like his daughter-in-law interviewing him for a news outlet that is, basically giving him an opportunity to just lie without any correction. I mean, it's just disgusting, quite frankly, that this is what passes for news for some people, and they believe it, unfortunately. But the fact is that the other thing that they are coming to terms with in general is he can lie about the gas prices, but people can see them when they go to buy gas. He can claim the grocery prices are fine, but people can see it. You know how much money it costs to have just a single bag of groceries. People get it, and they're making hard choices about whether they can afford medicine or groceries, whether they can pay this bill or not. That's the reality, and this is the reality that is brought to us by a billionaire president who's enriched himself in this office, who has grown richer and richer every single day almost, due to his actions and to investments and people investing in him and his family business and everything else. This man is taking our money to enrich himself and his family. This is a guy who probably never actually ran out to get a jug of milk from the grocery store. I don't even know if I know he has a license, but I don't know if he's really ever driven a car. He probably hasn't put gas in the car himself. He is out of touch with America in so many ways, but he's also out of touch with American values, which the things that actually have made our country great, our community, our connection to each other, our devotion to ensuring that people aren't left behind, that we have a social safety net that works. Instead, we have a president who races back from a meeting on the Hill to go to some prayer meeting at the White House, in which he says, yeah, he doesn't really care about Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security because we've got a war to pursue, a war of choice that he has pursued with recklessly and without good planning, and that has actually meant higher prices around the world due to new tolls that were never there before in the Gulf of Hormuz. This is a man who, one of my friends joked, has won and lost and won and lost and won and lost the Iran war more than anyone in history. It's all made up, but it is hurting us desperately. And there are parts that are not made up. Soldiers have died, kids have been killed, gas prices are up. Everyone is hurting at the pocketbook except for Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies.
And all that corruption brought to you by the John Roberts Supreme Court.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and to tie that up in a nice little bow, you'd mentioned Citizens United earlier. Going to, I believe, is it Hawaii is the first state to ban corporations from contributing to elections. Can you talk a little bit about that and why I'm not seeing every other state do it?
Well, this is a renewal because going back in our history, states like Montana that had to contend with the copper barons, and even the United States Congress in the Tillman Act over 100 years ago barred direct contributions by corporations, and that's still the law. They only can donate through PACs. But what Hawaii is doing is taking direct aim at Citizens United, which has allowed this outside money, outside of the direct disclosed money to a candidate or to a party, to address that. And there have been some efforts in states and city councils and other places across the country to address Citizens United, but this is a major action by an entire state. And so it really is a step forward. That Citizens United decision, most people don't realize because we didn't know it at the time, that was a ruling that was issued. It was a 5-4 ruling. Clarence Thomas sat in that majority. What we know now that we didn't know then was that just a few weeks before he joined that decision, his wife, Jenny, received $500,000 from Harlan Crow, the billionaire who has helped give Clarence Thomas and Jenny Thomas a bunch of gifts and luxury travel and fancy yacht trips and private planes. He gave her $500,000 to start a group to take advantage of that decision. That decision was illegitimate in terms of the merits, saying that Congress doesn't have the power to regulate money that's obviously being spent on ads to influence our elections, and that we could just have this massive money come in and distort who wins and manipulate people without disclosure. That's an abomination. But it's also an abomination because that should have been a 4-4 decision where if Clarence Thomas had any ethics, and he does not, in my view, he would have recused himself. And in that decision, that 5-4 decision, he even had the audacity to issue a concurring opinion in which he suggested that new disclosure rules would violate the Constitution because you can't chill free speech, meaning the spending of money. Knowing that his wife had received that $500,000 from his billionaire benefactor, she rushed an emergency request for an incorporation on New Year's Eve. You tell me they weren't celebrating that 500 grand she just got. She rushed that LLC approval into Virginia so that she could cash that check. And it was only because of investigative reporters that that information became known. That decision and others need to be reversed. And I'm certainly proud of the actions in Hawaii to begin to address this at the state level. We need to address it at the federal level, but let's start there.
Yeah, I would love to see it. And I think somebody in the comments mentioned that it's on a ballot in Michigan this coming election. So hopefully other states take note, and maybe we as progressives could start templating bills the way that the Heritage Foundation and ALEC and the CNP does it for Republicans. I would love to see us iteratively spread these methods throughout other states, because it's a little frustrating. I feel like we need a better project manager. I don't know what we're doing.
Well, there's hope. No, but it is like, these bold actions, sorry to interrupt, these bold actions then can start a brush fire for change. So I think we just cannot give up. We have to continue to make progress and really lift up those advances and try to spread those advances further and further.
Absolutely. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that over the coming weeks that we'll see more and more people fighting, because you did give us a little bit of hope. I feel like Mike feels a little bit more hopeful, a little more less discouraged in the beginning. I can't tell, like right around here. We should have like a little hope meter on the side that just measures.
Keep it so the baseline is not in the bottom. So.
Yeah.
Hope up, hope down. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But I love that you're doing the work. That's why we're doing this show, is so that we can have people on who are doing the work, regardless of how challenging and uphill and Sisyphean it feels. Everybody, there it is, True North Research. How else can people find you? Donate? How can people get involved?
Yes, you can support our work at Court Accountability and True North Research if you go to courtaccountability.org. I've got a Substack called Grave Injustice. It's over on Substack with Courier News. And we also have an amazing channel with Legal AF, part of the Midas Touch Network with Michael Popak, where we interview people. Would love to have you come on that show and talk with us there. We highlight leading thinkers and speakers and activists. And it's relatively new, but we're trying to grow it. And I hope folks will check out my book, my book, Without Precedent. I know there's a lot of different names, but Without Precedent. It's on audio now. I just got a call from the publisher about doing a paperback version, so I got to walk around the house singing out of tune a paperback writer. You can find me on the socials at Lisa Graves. And I'll just say, I remind myself that hope is a choice, and I'm choosing it. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
I love that. Hope is a choice, and I am choosing it. Looks like people like the idea of a hope meter. I think we could get a hope meter going for sure. And I'm struggling. I'm looking at things across the world globally. Here in Portugal, I came across my news feed that Greg Bovino, of all frickin' people, was here at a remigration conference. Did you hear about this?
Nope.
So yeah, neither had I, because if I had been, and I was moving this weekend, so I didn't have a ton of time, but I would have gone there to harass his tiny little ass. So this is a conference. The AFD was there, Vox was there. That's the far right party out of Spain, and it's the whole conference where he's basically the headliner, speaking about the need to send people back to whence they came because their values are not aligned with Western values. And so the same things that we're seeing in the US, they're trying to template here, and to bring in Greg Bovino, who is a Trump administration reject of all people. And so that to see him here, to see people coalesce around that, and not a lot, I think there were maybe 300 people at this conference, but it just goes to show that their movement, this far right movement, is very global and insistent. Like, we thought he was just going to tuck his little tail under and head off back to, I think it was in San Diego where he was at. But no, he's gallivanting around the world spreading these hateful messages and these methods that they're using that they're now talking about trying to do in Europe. They're moving even closer, the European Parliament, to potentially doing sort of what looks to be like remigration. So where's the hope meter? The hope meter just dropped. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's good to educate people here in America that this is a worldwide effort. You know, the white supremacist, white Christian nationalist movement is not just something unique to the United States. It's something that has existed, and is seeing a resurgence in the wake of MAGA and the Trump administration. And you're watching it play out pretty much in every European country, all over Eastern Europe as well. And, you know, Greg Bavino, I mean, you say he was a Trump reject, and I agree to an extent. He became, you know, politically inconvenient for the administration. But I think that they have found other uses for him, and perhaps, you know, headlining conventions like that one is a place where he's most likely pocketing large quantities of money, and he gets to spew his hateful, you know, white supremacist, nationalist viewpoints to other like-minded scumbags.
And that is what he's doing. And all of this at the backdrop of yesterday, there was another general strike. So that makes 2 general strikes in Portugal this year. And in the US, we haven't had even one.
I tell you, the Europeans know how to they know how to protest.
Oh, yeah. I had to walk back from the airport. I was on a map. I was like, okay. I was like, there's no train, there's no bus, there aren't any like taxis. I guess I will just walk. And I just started walking. But it gave me some time to think and reflect, because rather than be angry about it, I was like, yes, this is exactly it. You shut things down. And the reason why people are having a general strike here is because wages have not kept up with anything at all. And so housing is incredibly unaffordable for the average Portuguese person. And so what was really interesting was and you can see clips of this online, people who were just like, looked like they were out dressed for brunch, like very casual. We're not talking rabble rousers dressed in black with goggles and ready to fight and Molotov cocktails. No, we're talking just chill looking people were getting beaten in the streets yesterday by Portuguese police. It's rather appalling, but it just goes to show how the police state will repress anyone who tries to stand up for their economic rights. Like, this is very much about people trying to have a life to live, while billionaires are trying to take it all away.
That's why I tell people all the time, you know, law enforcement, whether it's in Portugal or whether it's in the United States, they are not the stewards of democracy. They are agents of the state. And I think there's a, you know, perfect example of this is at Delaney Hall in New Jersey, where, you know, Democratic Governor Mickey Sherrill deploys the New Jersey State Police and announces to the public that they're there to protect the protesters. But then in reality, what they do is they go in, they try to establish a free speech zone, which, you know, in and of itself to me is absurd. And then they beat the hell out of the protesters. They, you know, and I've watched countless amounts of footage from what took place that day, thanks to a lot of, you know, independent journalists and you know, online contributors that, you know, these officers were the aggressors. They were antagonistic. ICE agents were flying Trump flags, political flags, from the fence line of the detention facility. I mean, I mean, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that every law enforcement officer or even a majority of law enforcement officers in this country are in favor of this administration and of its policies and tactics. But I certainly will tell you that you could probably count on one hand how many are willing to stand up to the administration or stand up to their supervisors and say, no, I'm not going to engage in that behavior. And so then you end up with these, countless scenarios of law enforcement quelling First Amendment assemblies, attacking peaceful protesters.
And they act like they're doing it for us. Like they act like all of this is to make America safer. And that's what's so enraging, because they're protecting capital. They're protecting Core Civic. They're protecting Geo Group. They're protecting these companies who are profiting off of detaining, jailing, caging children.
I mean, but that's part of the Maya, that's part of the propaganda. I mean, that's what I was fed for 20 years when I was at the Metropolitan Police Department. I mean, I was told that I was the line between chaos and civilized society, when in reality, I was a line between billionaires and corporations and the average American citizen that was outraged about the way they were being treated and the way that their rights were being trampled on. I mean, there's a great line from a song that, the police are the agents of the bourgeoisie. And that is, in effect, what we were. We just worked for wealthy corporations and for the elite political class. And I think that, unfortunately, it takes years of being away from that before you actually wake up to, it took me a while to really, even in the aftermath of January 6th and separating from the police department, like it took me a long time to come to that conclusion.
Well, it's a hard conclusion to come to if one has lived one's life mostly in the mainstream. It's something that marginalized people have felt our entire lives. Like I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago in a fairly middle-class family, and I hated the police. I was afraid of the police because even though I had very little interaction, I know what they would do if I did have to interact with them. And so I think what's really interesting now, in particular, what kind of blew my mind was seeing how people in Portugal were protesting for economic reasons and being repressed by not even, this is a very liberal country, right? A lot of people, this is people's escape hatch, right, to come to Portugal, and seeing these people repressed so violently for asking for a living wage. And then I think about the US, where right now the people who are facing police brutality, the repression tactics, the kettling that's being done, are people who are fighting for immigrant rights, right? There are things that are specifically happening where people are in front of Delaney Hall or showing up at a protest in Los Angeles downtown. We're not yet seeing the people who are losing their jobs to AI, people who wouldn't necessarily find themselves at a protest. We're not seeing them yet try to act on their free speech rights, on their First Amendment rights, because they're still doing okay, like meaning they can still put things on a credit card, they can still draw from their savings. What I want people to understand, though, is that when those savings run out, or when those credit card limits get cut, or they've hit the ceiling, and they too decide they want to take to the streets in protest, this is the kind of repression that awaits them. And so, better to show solidarity and join the fight now than to wait until this system is even more emboldened than it already is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's like 2 points I want to touch on that you brought up. One is my appeal to law enforcement officers at Delaney Hall and everywhere else that these protests are taking place is exactly what you said, Maya. These people are there to protest the inhumane treatment of fellow human beings. They're not there to dismantle the government. They're not there to attack or assault law enforcement officers. They're not there for anarchy and chaos and destruction. They're there to try to give voice to people who are being inhumanely treated by the government. And so maybe take that into account when you're standing there on the police line, and when you're listening to your supervisor or the officer standing next to you give you some insane order, or act in a way that is outside of what your responsibilities really are, which is to protect and serve your community. And the second point is, like you said, Maya, we've seen these protests that have taken place, and they are peaceful protests in which millions of Americans have taken to the streets. What happens when those millions of Americans start to really feel the effects that these vulnerable communities have been experiencing, not just in the past 2 years, but in the past 200 years plus? And you're going to start seeing, at best, mass acts of civil disobedience. At worst, devolving into something completely, entirely something else, which is why engaging with politicians is important, no matter how disillusioning, we've got to do everything that we can before it gets to that point. But I'll be honest with you, I'm starting to lose faith that anything short of that is going to actually affect any type of change in this country, because nobody's listening.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I see somebody mentioned Peter Thiel, Kyoko. Thank you for that comment. Peter Thiel fleeing to Argentina, perhaps because he recognizes that this is untenable. The situation in the US is untenable in the sense that where do we go from here? The trajectory of things are such that, and we talked about this on the show last week, that it feels like in many ways violence may be the only way out of it. We're looking at a system that is somewhat collapsing in on itself if we are in a constitutional crisis, and the laws are, there is no law anymore when it comes to the Trump administration. And so to go back to the thing about Argentina, I lived in Argentina for almost 8 years. In many ways, and I used to argue with people over the US being more corrupt than Argentina. And people would say, oh, no, it's way more corrupt here. It's way more corrupt here. And I realized it was because in Argentina, everybody can bribe. Like, you can bribe anybody, like just the average person. You can bribe. Bribing is just a part of the culture. Uma coima, paga uma coima. And so it's just built throughout the culture. And in the US, only wealthy people can bribe. And so and get away with it, right? And so it's interesting to me that Peter Thiel chose Argentina, obviously because of Milei, and Milei will they are very much aligned, and so that's something that it's
policy with America. So there's that.
Yeah, you can't. There's no extradition between Argentina and the U.S. There isn't. Mm-mm. Really. I did not know that. So yeah, when people start looking at their escape plans, that's a time when we should take note that maybe we should act before it's too late. And it is frustrating because obviously not everybody can just flee from accountability the way that billionaires do. And so maybe when they shut down the international airports, we can all flood their private airline hangars where they're planning to escape from. You can't drive all the way to Argentina. I mean, you can, but
yeah, I mean, and I think that the show's called The Revolution. It invokes. I think it's important to talk about. And I know every time we talk about violence, you have to quantify. Like, we abhor violence here at this show. I abhor violence, and I abhor it because I have seen real violence. And I'm a father, and I don't want my children exposed to that. And I'm not one of those people that, walks around talking about like, oh, I'm, that's just not part of what I want for this country or who I am. But I think it's important to recognize that pretty much every struggle that the American people, all of the American people, have engaged in for rights has involved violence, and that this one right here involves a tremendous amount of violence that's being perpetrated by the state against the American people. It started with vulnerable communities. It started with, undocumented immigrants. It started with communities of color, and now it's spread to anyone and everyone who stands in opposition to this administration. When people talk about, well, it hasn't gotten that bad yet. Yes, it has. We've seen the weaponization of the Department of Justice, weaponization of law enforcement. I just did a podcast earlier this morning with, a former FBI agent who, left the FBI or was pushed out of the FBI, and talks about the gutting of that agency and how, the loyalty has become, the most qualifying factor for success in that agency. And now you have agents who are willing to go along with, these unprincipled, unconstitutional actions of this administration to the detriment of average, everyday American citizens.
Oh yeah, meritocracy. The meritocracy that they said that they wanted so badly. All it is loyalty, like you said,
Yeah.
and it should be enraging to most people if they're paying attention. And I think people have lost the capacity in many ways to pay attention until they absolutely have to, until it becomes a thing of survival. So, how it's changing our culture, I think, is what is really concerning to me, because you and I are both parents, and so our kids are watching how the lawlessness is allowed to spread unchecked. And like yesterday, I was at IKEA and I was in the parking lot, and I was about to put away my cart. And then I saw nobody was putting their cart away. I was like, oh, so we're just not putting our carts away now at IKEA? We're just going to let them just roll mindlessly through the parking lot? Is that what we're doing? And I said, well, fine. You know what? I'm sick of being the person who puts my cart back. And I broke the parking lot moral law. And I just left my cart there too, like everybody else, instead of, and I could have kept one, but I was like, what's the point? And I fear that that's what's happening in the US right now. Is people are like, why am I going to put my shopping cart back if the Trump administration is not going to put theirs back?
Why should I follow the law? Why should I pay my taxes? I think those are good questions that every American should be asking themselves right now. We have the most lawless, corrupt administration in the history of this country, possibly in the history. Well, I'm not going to. Caligula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of all time.
Right. Of all time.
Well, and it's crazy to pretend that it's not. And I think that's the thing, is like, I'm sick of having to walk around and pretend like it's even remotely normal, which is why I'm asking for stronger responses from our elected officials. Like, I need to see more than what I'm seeing. Like, I love a good legal pushback, but I want to start seeing some sabotage,
Or I would just settle for, reporters who are capable, people that actually have access to the president, that are supposed to be, impartial and fair and presenting the American people with what's actually happening, engage with him and actually push back against these lies, which we just don't see. I mean, that's why I stopped watching legacy media, for that simple reason, was because I can't sit there and watch this reporter take a question from Donald Trump where he says that this is the greatest economy in the history of all economics in the world, going back to the first time, a man used seashells to purchase some, a blanket. And that's what, and that's what, is journalism? Like you said, the American people aren't buying it, but then what ends up happening is they just turn it off and they're like, well, fuck this. And then, like you said, our capacity for dealing with being uncomfortable is significant. I thought long before now, the American people would have revolted. And they just seem to take it and say, "Daddy, can I have another?"
Yeah, no one is coming to save us, y'all. And if we've read any of the history books, you have to know that a collapse will come without without a lot of pushback on our end. And as history tells us, we can push back and we can win, but it has to be steady. We have to steady, slow. I want to say slow and steady wins the race, but it's not even slow and steady at this point. We have to push back.
Hurry the fuck up! I'm tired of this shit.
We're tired. We're tired of this shit. The hope meter is low on today's show, but never fear. You know what? The work is continuing to do the work, even when the hope is low. Like
Hope
that's.
meter is low. The liquor cabinet is full.
As I told you, I'm purposely not drinking this election cycle because I don't want to. It's the hot flashes, but
Sam,
it's also.
give me another host, Sam. Give me another co-host. I can't fucking hang out with a sober person.
That's hurtful. I told her, I'm raw dogging. I'm raw dogging the end of democracy, and it is bad. It is hard.
You're my guardrails, Maya.
Exactly.
If it wasn't for you,
Out.
I know the FCC doesn't regulate this shit, but they would find a way to come snatch me.
Yes, they would.
So
Yes, they would. That's I'm like. It's not. We're not in the same room, but sometimes I feel like I'm kicking you under the table. Like, wait, what are you doing?
I know that was happening when I started talking about violence. I felt it.
You should see like my eyebrows go twitch. I'm like, metaphorically speaking, we're talking these metaphors, guys. But I do feel better when I'm laughing with you. It helps raise my mood, and that's all I need to get me through another couple of days. It is so important, y'all, to have these kind of conversations with that Mike and I have with each other, with the people in your lives. Joke through it, laugh through it, keep fighting, hydrate, not with too much beer, wine. I don't even know what you drink. I have no idea. What do you drink?
Everything. Beer, wine, liquor.
There you have it. Oh, we could drop a. Can we have like a liquor brand? Can you have like merch? Can you have like the
Desperate times, I might take a shot of what's it called? Mouthwash.
Well, I do have mouthwash. I do have mouthwash, so I guess I drink. Sometimes when I'm brushing my teeth, it's a little, All right, y'all. That's enough for us. That's it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Like, subscribe, share, so that we can keep doing this, because we enjoy doing this. Don't worry, I'm not drinking any mouthwash. That's just Mike. And yeah. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.